Talk about your findings, this comprehensive first-time report of the Committee to Protect Journalists on press freedom here in the United States.
I found that these leaks investigations and a program called the Insider Threat Program, instituted since the Bradley Manning leaks, that requires government employees to monitor each other to make sure that they're not leaking information to anyone, including journalists, to have really frightened government officials. Many reporters that I interviewed here in Washington say that government officials are afraid to talk to them. They're afraid that their telephone conversations and their email exchanges would be monitored. That is to say that investigators could come in later, as they did in several of the leaks investigations, and use their telephone and email records in order to find the contacts between government officials and reporters. So they're simply scared to talk to reporters. And this is not good, because I just heard the president saying that he was concerned about the safety of our troops and our intelligence officers. It's important that responsible, knowledgeable government officials be able to talk to reporters about these matters, so that, among other things, they can alert reporters to information that might be harmful to national security or harmful to human life, in which case no responsible news organization would publish those.
What were you most surprised by?
I guess I was most surprised by, I'm used to reporters complaining about access, because we all want more access than we can get all the time, and that's understandable. But I was surprised by the pervasiveness of this administration's control over information, by how much it discourages leaks of all kinds and not just classified information leaks, and how much it does not allow for unauthorized contacts with the press if it can help it, and how much it uses social media and other digital means, websites and so on, to put out a lot of its own story, a lot of its own information that makes the administration look good, while restricting access to information that would hold the government accountable for its actions.
Leonard Downey, for this report, you spoke with New York Times national security reporter Scott Shane. We also just interviewed him, who said sources are now scared to death to even talk about unclassified everyday issues. He said, quote, "There's a gray zone between classified and unclassified information, and most sources were in that gray zone. Sources are now afraid to enter that gray zone," Shane said. "It's having a deterrent effect if we consider aggressive press coverage of government activities being at the core of American democracy. This tips the balance heavily in favor of the government." That was Scott Shane of the New York Times. Leonard Downey.
Yes, that's exactly what he told me, and this is exactly what I heard from dozens of reporters around Washington, from news executives, and even from some former government officials who are concerned, as I said earlier, about the fact that it's important that knowledgeable reporters like Scott Shane, who knows so much about national security, and his editors who can make good decisions about what to publish, if they're cut off from this information that's important for them. Here's a good example. Look at how much the administration has revealed now about the NSA surveillance program, only because Edward Snowden provided that information to the press. The press published it, and that forced the administration to make public information about this program that Americans ought to have, so that they can make decisions about it.
In May, reporters asked President Obama whether his administration's probe of the emails of Associated Press reporters and editors' emails recalls President Richard Nixon's targeting of the press when it attempted to block the New York Times from publishing the Pentagon Papers, the secret history of the Vietnam War leaked to the paper by whistleblower Dan Ellsberg. This is part of the exchange.
I'd like to ask you about the Justice Department. Do you believe that the seizure of phone records from Associated Press journalists this week, or before that was announced recently this week, was an overreach? And do you still have full confidence in your Attorney General? Should we interpret yesterday's renewed interest by the White House in a media shield law as a response to that? And more broadly, how do you feel about comparisons by some of your critics of this week's scandals to those that happened under the Nixon administration?
Well, yeah, I'll let you guys engage in those comparisons, and you can go ahead and read the history, I think, and draw your own conclusions. My concern is making sure that if there's a problem in the government, that we fix it. That's my responsibility, and that's what we're going to do.
And this is White House spokesperson Jay Carney, questioned in May about the AP spying scandal and the Obama administration's prosecutions of whistleblowers.
This administration in the last 4 years has prosecuted twice as many leakers as every previous administration combined. How does that reflect balance?
I would say that the president is committed to the press's ability to pursue information, to defending the First Amendment. He is also, as a citizen and as Commander-in-Chief, committed to the proposition that we cannot allow classified information to be that can do harm to our national security interests or to endanger individuals to be leaked, and that is a balance that has to be struck.
But the record of the last 4 years does not suggest balance.
That's your opinion, Ari.
No, it's twice as many prosecutions as all previous administrations combined. That's not even close.
I understand that there are ongoing investigations that preceded this administration, but again, I'm not going to. I can tell you what the president's views are, and the president's views include his defense of the First Amendment, his belief that journalists ought to be able to pursue information in an unfettered way. And that is backed up by his support for a media shield law, both as senator and as president. And it is also true that he believes a balance needs to be struck between those goals and the need to protect classified information.
If you can respond to both of those, Leonard Downey. Of course, that's right. White House spokesperson Jay Carney, who is the former Washington bureau chief of Time magazine.
Yes, and I interviewed him for my report, and he stated responses like those you just heard. First, there's too much that's classified. The president himself has said it repeatedly in the past that too much information is classified. It's not just information that might be harmful to national security or human life. It's just lots and lots, millions and millions and millions of documents and pieces of information that are classified that shouldn't be. Obviously, that preceded this administration, but it's not improved during this administration. The president promised to have the most transparent government in American history. He promised to reduce overclassification. He promised to make it easier to obtain government information through the Freedom of Information Act. So far, none of these promises have been kept. So part of the reason for why I agreed to do this report for the Committee to Protect Journalists is I would like to alert the president to the fact that this is one of the first promises he made. He signed presidential directives about open government his first day in office. These are not being carried out by his administration. He still has time for his legacy to make good on these promises.
Talk about the Justice Department acknowledging seizing the work, home, and cell phone records used by almost 100 reporters and editors at the Associated Press. The phones targeted included the general AP office numbers in New York City, in Washington, D.C., in Hartford, Connecticut, and the main number for the AP in the House of Representatives press gallery, which, of course, means that many other reporters were speaking on it. The action coming as part of a probe into leaks behind an AP story on U.S. intelligence operation.
This has had a chilling effect on both government officials, government sources, and journalists. And it's not the only one of these investigations in which such records were secretly subpoenaed and seized. Half of these 8 investigations that took place. So reporters and sources know that records have been seized in the past. And as a result, reporters told me people are afraid to talk to them on the telephone. They're afraid to engage in email traffic with them. And the reporters themselves are concerned about putting their sources at risk by conducting telephone and email conversations with them, which means we have to go back to secret meetings like the underground garage meetings with Deep Throat during Watergate. Reporters are trying to figure out if they can encrypt their email, but we now know that NSA is trying to figure out how to get past encryption. Reporters are very, very worried about putting their sources in jeopardy merely by trying to talk to them about the people's business.
What is the Insider Threat Program?
The Insider Threat Program, which was first described by the McClatchy newspapers last summer, it is a presidential order that came after the Manning case. The government was very, very concerned about other Mannings somewhere in the government because so much of this information is digitally available to clever people, and so they instituted this program where they ordered every government department and every agency to order their employees, and there are directives that have gone out, which McClatchy newspapers obtain, that instruct employees to monitor each other to make sure that there are no leaks of classified information. And it's been interpreted by some of the agencies, as you look at their plans, to go beyond classified information to information about anything that's going on in that agency.
How do you think overall, Leonard Downey, the press have been impacted? I mean, going back to this point that the Committee to Protect Journalists has never issued a report on press freedom in the United States before.
Correct. Correct. This has had a chilling effect on not just coverage of national security, but coverage of the government generally, along with the other policies of the administration in which they've exercised such tight control over their message, over their information, that makes it very difficult for the press to hold the administration accountable for its actions. Now, that doesn't mean reporters are going to stop, and even though they complain to me, they're still out there working aggressively, and there still is good coverage of a lot of things, but we don't know what we've not been able to find out about how this government works in order to hold it accountable to the American people. The president said he wants to be able to have his government held accountable to the American people. Then I think they should change their policy.